Woo!
It's just awesome. I'm so glad we went. Didn't go to work. We'd be sitting there going, "Go, we should have gone fishing."
Hey, welcome everybody to the Salty Yak Podcast. I'm your host, Kerry Beeson, and with us today we have
Kevin.
from Kevin's Outside.
Yes, sir.
You know, somebody made a comment, I think it was last night, that we're hanging around a lot together.
I saw something about that.
I don't know that that's true or not.
Nah, I think that's just a fable.
So we're doing something a little bit different today for y'all. We are talking one subject for the whole podcast. So what we're going to talk about, I feel is pretty timely, some really good information, and especially with the bays and the back lakes and the marshes being really low right now, this is a good little opportunity
To not hit oyster.
and go do so. I didn't hit any oyster yesterday
I have no new oyster rash.
at all. So
None.
what we are going to talk about is white bass fishing.
Yes, sir.
So Monroe cycropus is the scientific name, and I probably butchered that, but that's as close as this redneck could get to it.
But I just learned something new.
There you go.
My day's complete.
So, you know, a white bass is a true bass,
I did.
unlike a largemouth, which is not a true bass.
Really?
Largemouth is a member of the sunfish or the sunfish perch family.
Oh.
So when we say green perch, we really mean it.
That means ditch pickle.
Yeah.
Pickle. Yeah, right?
Yeah. So white bass is a member of the same family as a striper. So
Yes.
they are a true bass.
And a hybrid.
Well, hybrid's true, but they just cross them between, and those are fun to catch, man.
Yes.
I used to love to catch those.
Oh, they fight.
And but you said you caught some in Conroe before?
In Livingston.
In Livingston, you
Yeah.
caught them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to catch them in Belton. They were just in. If you don't know, well, there's a little rabbit hole. It's across. They take and I forget if it's the male or the female striper. I think it's the eggs from a female striper and the milk from a white bass male, and cross them, and you get a hybrid. We call them hybrid stripers. People call them wipers.
Wipers.
They call them different things, but man, they are fun to catch.
Now, I think they have them in Conroe. I just never have gone. I know they have guides that take people out there.
So we're talking, you know, we're going to talk about the life cycle of the white bass and how I guess we're kind of exploiting that maybe in our fishing, but we're just taking advantage of it. But sometimes those dang hybrids will go up there and think they're sterile. They can't reproduce. So they just make them just for sportsmen to catch.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So it's a hybrid. It does not reproduce. So, but sometimes they have the tendency that they want to go up there and hang out in these creeks. So yeah, 5-6 pound striper or hybrid on your little light tackle in a creek.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like that probably about 2 to 3 pound bass I caught yesterday. Black bass I caught.
Yeah, exactly.
That was fun.
Nice little side thing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the life cycle of the white bass. So white bass are native to Texas, and I'm sure this seems like a Texas thing. I don't see a whole lot about like Louisiana or other coastal states, but I'm sure they have white bass in them too. And I'm sure the same thing occurs there. But to me, this seems like a really a Texas thing.
Maybe Paul can comment on this, but I was thinking he said up in Minnesota they had them.
They have them.
I didn't know. He was talking something about, because he used to fish in Minnesota a lot. And he was talking about catching them up there.
Well, so in their life cycle, before we impounded lakes in the state of Texas, they just lived in the rivers.
Yeah.
So when we impounded the lakes, they would live in the lakes during the summer, in the fall, in the winter, and in the springtime they would migrate back up into the creek. Any feeder creek that has flow in it, that flows into one of these impoundment lakes, they go back up in those creeks, in those rivers, to spawn, so they can carry on their life cycle.
It has a lot to do with water temperature and barometric
Correct.
pressure.
Correct, but they always do it in the spring.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the life cycle of a white bass. He lives his life out in the impoundment most of the year, and then January, February, March, April, in that time period, depending on what part of the state you're in, depending on what the water temperature is, they will start up in the creeks to go spawn. And it can be really, really fun. And for us kayak fishermen, I'm willing to give up a few days of saltwater fishing to go catch these.
Yeah, especially this time of year.
Yeah. So limits on these, the state,
Yeah, 25.
25, and they only have to be 10 inches long.
Yeah.
Now, I don't keep one unless it's usually 12 inches long because it doesn't get that big of a fillet. And like we went fishing, white bass fishing yesterday, and we did pretty good.
Yeah, I'd say we did.
We did okay. Now, there were some of the people along on the trip that had never caught a white bass, and they did pretty good too.
Yes, they did.
So,
I think he said, what did he catch, 15?
yeah. And he was only there for just a fraction of the time that we were.
Yeah.
So, I don't know that I caught one that was not a legal fish.
No.
They
Not
were
a single
all
one.
12 plus inches.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Those were the biggest white bass I've caught in years.
Yeah, so that's
Well, I was just thinking about this. Maybe it wasn't white bass Paul was talking about. But he was talking about something up in Minnesota.
so white bass are also known as sand bass.
Yeah.
White bass. A guy there at the launch asked me if we were catching any white perch.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
But white perch, he's talking about crappie. They're not talking about white bass.
Yeah.
So usually you hear white bass or sand bass.
Yeah.
is what they refer to. Used to I guess it still goes by. An indicator that the old timers will tell you is when the dogwood trees are blooming.
Yeah, I've heard
That's when you go white bass fishing.
Yeah.
But I have found in my travels fishing white bass for a number of years now that's you can catch them way before those dogwood trees or your peach trees or whatever it is go into bloom.
I think the real way to find the white bass when they're running is you just got to start going periodically during the time that you know they're going to be coming up there.
So, and this is how this whole thing, this whole fishing trip kind of planned out because our buddy Austin was looking to go to the coast and he knew that the water level was low. And I said, hey, you remember that place that we went and fished last year for white bass? He's like, yeah. I said, you should go over there and give it a try. And he did.
Thank you, Austin.
And he found them. Well, I was getting him to thank me for telling him to go over there. But and he found them. So we went over there yesterday and
We tore them up.
there was 4 of us that were there the whole time. Every one of us caught even though we didn't keep our limit, we caught our limit.
I caught somewhere around 40.
Yeah, I quit counting like at 26, 27.
I stopped at 30.
And I did keep 5. and he gave them away. But and when I started keeping the 5, I was already, I'd already caught a bunch. Mm-hmm. I'd already caught, and released more than my limit. But,
Oh, yeah.
So.
And I kept 25.
Yeah. So you kept 25. We met Keith. Keith came out and joined us.
Yeah.
And Keith caught 25 or kept 25.
Yeah.
And then Paul came out and
He kept 3, but he caught 15, 16.
And he mentioned that he's the only one in the house that eats fish.
And he cooked those last night.
Did you see that?
That looked good.
Yeah, that tempura.
Good.
Yeah. That looked really good.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I wish I should have done that. So
Yeah, my wife's wanting to have a fish fry for the neighbors.
well, I think we got an idea. So that's the life cycle of them. And, you can use the little dogwood tree thing analogy if you want to, but I'm telling you, the information we're giving you now, I'm going to get this podcast out here really quick, and now is the time to go and check your creeks and check some of these other places that we're going to talk about and find some of these white bass. So where do you go?
Well, creeks.
So we've talked about it's not just any creek or river that's coming out of an impoundment that has these white bass in it.
Yeah, but it's mostly the creeks that feed into the big lakes.
That is correct. Yes. So we're talking, we're here in the Houston area. So Lake Houston is a great place.
Lake Livingston.
Lake Conroe. And then as you start moving around, any of these lakes,
Sam Rayburn,
Toledo Bend.
Mm-hmm.
There's some excellent stuff over that way.
Yes, sir.
So, and then you could go either further west. Lake Somerville, Lake Granger, that I've done a lot of fishing on, and there is some excellent white bass fishing out in the hill country. Now that it falls later, it hadn't even really kicked off at all over there.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but you could go to Lake LBJ and go up in the Llano River.
Yeah.
There's a place there. If you've ever been up there, called the Slab, and if you're a fly fisherman, You should go check this out. So you can park on the side of the road, and it's the river. So you're down in the riverbank behind the high water, below the high water mark, and you can just wade this river. And if you ever seen it when it's low, there's channels cut through this granite, and those fish stack up in those channels.
Oh, wow.
And you figure out where that is, and you cast your fly up there. I've seen them catch one after the other, after the other, after the other.
Oh, I got to get this information and write it down.
So, yeah, you know,
It's always that's good info right there.
I've got a confession.
Go ahead.
Between Paul throwing the fly rod yesterday, and you talking about it,
Oh, I love fly fishing.
and now y'all bastards. I'm kind of thinking maybe I ought to think about getting a fly just to play with it.
Oh yeah.
So let's move on. I digress. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. But yeah, out there in that hill country, because there's also a place, Lake Buchanan, where the Colorado River comes in. You can go up. There's Colorado Bend State Park. You can go up there and camp. You can bank fish this with your kids. You can take your kayaks, and as long as usually the water's not real crazy up there, but you can kayak fish it for white bass and
Yeah. See, now you're adding the family into it,
Yeah.
and that makes it even better.
yeah. A lot of these places for white bass fishing, you can do with the family.
Yeah.
Like you can go to Lake Somerville, and you can fish. You know, you can walk in on Yaywall Creek, providing that the water level is high enough. So I had an email come to me, said that they fished, or they were at Yaywall Creek the other day, or maybe a couple of weeks ago, and there was hardly any water in the creek. Now I think we've had some rain since then.
Yeah.
But here, let me give you a hot tip here. waterdata.usgs.gov. You go to that, and you go click on Texas, and you can check the flow rates of rivers.
Yeah.
And you can have an idea, is there any water flowing in there or not? So there's places like here in Houston, you can go to Spring Creek. You could go to, what's that other creek?
Well, Spring Creek's easy. Like, up there, there's places you can just walk down the bank.
There's
And
parks,
also,
yeah.
San Jacinto River underneath the like US 59 bridge. There's places you can walk up and down the side of the river.
There's another creek there that runs into Spring Creek, Cypress Creek.
Oh yeah.
So there's
yeah.
there's a couple places on Cypress Creek that you can go up there and walk it.
Yeah.
So
Because they made that bike path.
Yeah.
That from the Woodlands all the way over to Humble.
Yep.
And there's several places that you can fish off the bank there.
Yeah. Another thing to think about. So if fish are living in the lake, guess where else they're living? They're living below the dam of these impoundments.
Yes, they are.
So in those fish, they have the same natural tendency that they want to go upstream to spawn. So what happens to them?
They get trapped.
They get bumped in at the dam.
Yeah.
So if it is legal for you to fish the tailwaters behind an impoundment, I think you can do it at Lake Livingston.
You can, but they're moving the cable back really far away from the dam.
Okay.
And so it's a big impact on fishing there.
See, I know, like Lake Conroe, I don't think you can.
No.
Lake Granger, you can. You can walk right behind it and fish the tailwaters of it real easy.
Oh, yeah,
So
good info.
So you have to kind of check your area out and see what you've got. But those tailwaters below the dams, like the same guy who sent me about the water levels in Somerville, he said they have the spillway at Somerville, which is usually a good place to go fishing. They've got it closed due to construction right now.
So if a person was looking at Google Earth maps and they just wanted to try to pick a place to go find white bass, what would you suggest to them to look for this time of year?
You know,
Without giving a specific spot, because we all live in different areas, but what would be the best way for them to look and find a spot they can go?
go look for the nearest lake that you can get to. Okay.
Yeah.
And then that lake has to have white bass in it.
And how would you know that?
Go to Texas Parks and Wildlife, and they'll tell you. You can go to they have every lake, small lake, big lakes, and they have listed what has been stocked in there and lake records and stuff, so you can see what's in that lake. So, like, I'll tell you one that doesn't have it in it is like Fayette County,
Right.
that hot water discharge lake there.
Yeah.
Where they do all the bass tournament. There's no white bass in that lake. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
There didn't used to be white bass in Gibbons Creek.
Yeah.
but they had to, when the water got so low, they had to pump water out of the Navasota River into Gibbons Creek. And guess what?
They pump some white bass into
They
it.
do. But all the creeks around Gibbons Creek are on private land.
Huh.
So, but I do know a guy.
Oh.
So I do know a guy there.
Yeah, there you go.
But that leads me to Lake Limestone. So if you're up in the Lake Limestone area, so go find a lake that has a natural river or creek that feeds into it, and then look for some kind of access point where a road crosses that upper end. Like, I'll just use Lake Limestone as an example. So you go find the farm to market road that crosses the Navasota River above Lake Limestone, and go check it out.
Yeah, and another place, like if you look at like Lake Livingston, and there's Sandy Creek, Bethany Creek, Kickapoo Creek. There's a bridge on all these that you can walk the edges of, and right where the water goes under, it's narrowed down, and look for them.
And usually those places where those rivers, roads and stuff cross, you usually can launch a kayak there.
Yes, you can.
And so that's what we're talking about here. Generally, yeah, there's some bank fishing. You can get your kids involved. But, speaking to the kayak fishing here, yeah, where these bridges cross is good places to go launch your kayak.
Yeah. And most of the bridges will have a boat ramp.
Yeah, they have
there.
something. You can
Yeah.
see where people have been putting in some other ones just right quick. I mean, because those of y'all that are listening in the Austin area, Lake Georgetown was one of my favorite places where the San Gabriel River runs into it. Lake Belton. Now, Lake Belton's a little harder. There's a Leon River side. You can't get to the Cow House side because it runs up into Fort Hood. But you can go up where Highway 36 crosses Lake Belton up there. And I think there's even another state park up there on the Leon River where you can go fish that.
Yeah.
So any other thoughts on places?
No, I'm more of an East Texas boy, so I've always fished Conroe, Livingston, Sam Rayburn, Toledo Bend.
So talk about the water level. So if the water level is not high enough for the white bass to get back in the creeks, they will do their thing out on the sandbars in front of those creeks.
Yes.
So I think we've had enough rain this year that's probably not going to be a problem. But I know in years past, when we fished in Somerville, the water wasn't high. It was literally not high enough that they could not get into there was a delta, and it was high enough that it was sticking out of the water.
Yeah.
So but we were catching them on rattle traps out in front of the out in front of the sandbars and stuff were there.
Yeah.
So places to go, we got that covered for you. Google Maps, Google Earth is your friend on this.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So, let's talk a little bit about lures.
Okay, let's do that.
So I just mentioned rattle trap, and rattle trap has been my go-to white bass bait on the lake. Because you'd see them schooling, chasing shad on top. You just always throw a rattle trap at them.
Yeah. On the lake, I used a Little George.
Okay, so but like right now, where we were catching them yesterday, we were not catching them back up in the creek.
No.
We were catching them in the open water, the deeper open water out in front of the creek.
Yeah.
So we needed to use something that was a little bit heavier.
Yeah.
And I was catching them on a rattle trap. You were catching them on...
I was using a crankbait, but it wasn't really, I wouldn't call it a shallow running crankbait. It was like a mid-level. It wasn't deep diving, but it was like a mid-level running, something that ran about 4 foot deep.
Most of the water that I seemed to be catching them in was anywhere 5 to 12 foot.
Yeah, in some places that was 14, 16 foot.
I know. There's some deep holes out there.
Yeah. So I was using the crankbait, and the one thing I did notice is the chrome color. Mm-hmm. It really helped.
The water wasn't like real clear. I mean, I guess it was just kind of like normal lake water, I guess is what I would call it.
Yeah, it's kind of murky.
But yeah, I was throwing a blue and chrome rattle trap.
Yeah.
And then I went to a smaller black and chrome just so I could throw it on my my ultralight rod and catch some on it. Yeah.
Did you see what I did when I got to 20?
What'd you do?
I brought a Zepco. It was a spin cast, but it's a Zepco Bill Dance Special 1999 from Bass Pro Shops. It's only like 4 foot long, and it's a rod that we keep at the house for kids to use in the pond across it. So I brought it just to play with it. And I just started, I'd do 5 casts with one lure, then I'd go to another lure, do 5 casts, and go to another lure. It wasn't long till I had my 25 limit. I mean...
And you caught him on that little Zebco?
Oh yeah, it was fun too.
It's
Yeah.
like catching them on a Barbie doll.
Oh
rod.
yeah. I mean, it's not much more than a Snoopy pole, really.
Yeah.
So it was fun.
Other than it has, Bill Dance's name on it. So.
Yeah, I'm sure he uses one.
I'm sure you use that exact one. So lures, white bass are really easy. They like to hit.
When they
like to
eat, they eat.
Exactly. When they're not eating, they're not eating.
They're not eating. You can see schools of them run a lure right through them. You'll be lucky if you snag one in the back.
Well, that was one thing that we did yesterday. Is we were deep enough water, we were able to mark fish and kind of hang around the areas that they were.
Yes.
And
Oh, you could see them bundled up.
oh yeah, there's no doubt, and they were willing to hit. Mm-hmm. So rattle trap, big one, small one, crankbaits, and there were several people throwing crankbaits,
Yes.
catching them.
Yes. I think I was the one that started with a crankbait, and I was catching one almost every cast, and then Keith started using a crankbait because he came up to me and said, "What are you using?" I said, and I showed him, and he said, "I think I got one in my box just like that." So he started using it and started catching. And I think Robert used a Roadrunner for a little while.
He switched around a lot.
Yeah.
He-
So he had the Roadrunner, and what else did he use? Oh, Rooster Tail.
He was throwing. So now a road runner, for those of y'all who don't know what this is, so imagine your regular little jig head, but it's got a kind of, they call it like a horse head, and it has the little spinner hanging off the front of it.
Yep.
So that's what we call a road runner.
Yeah.
That is my go-to white bass jig head
Yeah.
with some type of curly tail or little paddle tail or something on the back of it.
I used both, and it didn't matter. They were hitting both.
Yeah.
But what I did notice, I had that little tandem rig where I could run two Roadrunners at the same time. They didn't like that.
Really? You couldn't get two at a time?
I never even got a hit on it. But I went back to one Roadrunner, bam, very first cast.
I've seen when you catch them out on the lake, when they're schooling, chasing shad, you could throw a spec rig at them
Oh yeah,
and catch them two at a time.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
and the rooster tail, the spinner.
Yeah.
I really like using those. Mm-hmm. But like I said on the last podcast that we do, you want to use those in open water because otherwise you'll just be getting hung up
in everything,
and again and again. So, they're really simple, and they will, if you're a live bait, if you're fishing with kids, you can go buy you some minnows.
Yeah. Did you hear that lady on the side of the bank?
I didn't hear the lady. I heard
So that
our
lady,
entertainment for the day.
that lady was, "Get these bleep 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 bass off of here! I want some crappie. I want some crappie. I bought minnows to catch some crappie." And she's like, "Bleep bleep bleep," and she was cussing.
I did not hear
She
that.
kept catching white bass, and she was looking for crappie.
Yeah.
And they were eating her minnows.
Well, and that's a bycatch this time of year.
Exactly. They hang together.
Usually the crappie spawn is a little later than the white bass spawn.
Yeah.
But they do kind of I did catch one crappie yesterday.
Yes, you did.
But it wasn't, he was like 11 and a half. He wasn't like a big, huge, I've caught some like 14 inches.
Yeah,
there.
and I would have took that one.
Yeah, I guarantee you somebody would have took it. But there's this time of year when if you go and you buy some minnows with the kids and put them out there under a little cork, you're going to catch both probably.
Oh, absolutely.
You're probably going to catch more white bass than you are crappie.
Yeah, they're more aggressive.
Yeah, and but they're there. There's a lot of the bank fishermen. That's what they're fishing for is crappie.
Yeah,
But the white bass will come by there, and we were just all we were all throwing artificial.
yeah. That's all we fish
just,
with mostly.
So
Out of the kayak.
other than your Zebco Bill Dance, what kind of rod and reel were you throwing?
I had a St. Croix medium light.
Okay.
Sorry. And in a Lew's, I actually put I think it was an old Lew's C30, the small spinning reel on it. Because I wanted to find one of my old small spinning reels.
So you were throwing all spinning gear? Do you throw any bait casting?
No,
Okay.
I didn't.
So I took my green rod, I guess it's a medium light.
Yeah, I saw that.
So just because we throwing a full size rattle trap.
Right.
And I didn't want to throw it on my light spinning tackle.
Uh-huh.
So I threw that one, and then I just took one other. It wasn't even my ultra light. It was just my light TFO with that
Right.
little Fluger presidential reel on it.
Yeah, I like that reel.
And just throwing that little 1/2-inch rattle trap.
I think that's what I'm going to put on that St. Croix because I like yours so much.
That little it works really well.
I was experimenting with that Lew's yesterday.
And it was just fun to catch them on that light rod
Yeah.
out there. catch them on the end of you throw the cast out there and they whack it as soon as it hits it. And you got 20 yards to fight them to bring them back in.
Yeah.
So that was pretty fun.
That's what I started doing, casting as far as I could so that I'd get one way out there. It's more fun.
What were you doing for line?
I think that I still had the 20-pound braid on there, but I tied a real light leader onto it.
Yeah. I was doing the same thing because there's lots of stumps and stick-ups.
Yeah.
And the good thing about like the Roadrunner jigs and stuff like that, they have a small wire hook, and you usually can bend it.
Yes.
The hook will bend, and you'll get your bait back. Then you just take your pliers and
Bend it back.
and bend the bait back.
Make sure you bend it back, or you won't catch any.
Yeah,
Or they'll hit it.
They'll hit it, and you won't catch it.
I didn't realize that my hook was bent, and I kept getting hits. And I'm like, why am I not catching them? I looked at my hook, and then, yeah.
So that's the benefit of using. And usually up in the creeks, I'm only throwing those little Roadrunner jigs, or even just a regular jig head,
Yeah.
but with no spinner on it.
Yeah.
So
Little curly tail
I'm
or
using something like that up in the creek, because if you're going to get hung up, there's lots of stick ups, there's lots of stumps,
Yeah.
and you're going to get hung up.
It's basically crappie gear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But the white bass put up a little bit more fight than a crappie does.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
for sure.
they are fun to catch.
Yeah.
So so ultralight gear works really well.
Yeah.
Your bass gear, you know what? And believe it or not, your saltwater gear will work in freshwater.
Absolutely.
Your reel doesn't go, oh my God, this is not saltwater. I don't know what to do.
Everything I took yesterday, I used in the marsh except for the bill dance.
Yeah. Salt would just eat that one up.
It sure would.
It would just eat that one up. So I'm using, you can go braid, you can go mono. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
These things are willing to hit. They're not line shy. I do put I had some fluoro leader on it, but that's just in case I got hung up that would break before my braid or my rod would break.
Yeah,
So,
and me too. I normally use 20 or 30 pound in the marsh, but I was using, I think, 15-pound leader yesterday.
I think I was using 10.
Yeah, I didn't. That 15 was. I wasn't going to go buy any new leader
Yeah,
line. That 15
yeah.
was the lightest I had.
Yeah,
So.
they're not line shy. And the water's dark enough. I think at one point I went braid straight to the jig.
I think Keith did that too, or at least he talked about it.
It didn't bother him at all.
No,
Didn't bother him at all.
absolutely not.
So rods, reels, lines, lures, places to go. I guess
and just your regular kayak.
in just your regular kayak. About the only thing left we got for y'all to cover on this is what do you do with them once you get them home?
Oh, yeah.
Because 3 redfish, it doesn't take very long to clean 3 redfish.
Yeah, it was pretty daunting cleaning 25.
And cleaning 5 trout, man, trout are the easiest thing to clean in the world.
Yes, they are.
It takes a little more finesse, cleaning a flounder. But man, you bust out that electric fillet knife, and so what I do, I just straight fillet them.
Yeah.
Don't gut them, don't do nothing. Straight
Nope.
fillet them, cut the rib cage out.
Yep.
And where you and me differ on this, we were talking about, I usually trim the bloodline out. You said you don't.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
It's not that big of a bloodline, but
No, I can't taste the difference really.
so.
But I'm not. I mean, I know that there's some people that are really picky. I'm not as picky. So
When you get to be our age and our size, we're not really picky eaters.
it doesn't matter. I
Doesn't
just
matter.
eat.
Exactly. So, favorite way to cook them?
Fry 'em.
Yeah. To me, this is white bass are the perfect fish fry fish.
Yes, they are.
You can catch a bunch of them. You can catch a bunch of them usually pretty quick if you find them.
Yeah.
Good firm white meat.
Yep.
And they fry up deliciously.
Yep.
And again, like Paul, shout out to Paul for that tempura. He went like the extra mile.
He sure did.
And because I that's my favorite. And fish fry batter is okay, but I love that, like the wet batter that you do and then fry them. I love that.
Yeah. As far as the white bass go, in the past, one thing I've done is, like, if I do a fish fry for the neighbors, I'll probably, some of them, not all of them, I'll baste them in mustard before I fry them.
I've done that.
And it's actually really good.
I've done that with kingfish.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the funny thing is, it doesn't taste like mustard when it comes out of the fry. It gives it a little taste, but it's
got a
not
little
like,
zing, and you can even use like the Dijon mustard, and it gives it a little bit more, that pow.
Or you can use the HEB mustard. It doesn't matter.
It really don't
It
matter.
doesn't matter. But yeah, I've done that, and that's pretty good too.
But when I say Dijon, I mean like the brown,
Yeah,
that has a
the brown
spicy
mustard.
in it.
Yeah. You were like Grey Poupon. Pardon me. That's a great. You remember that
Right,
commercial?
yeah, oh yeah.
There'll be some of y'all young ones that don't get that.
Oh no,
But, yeah.
they'll be like, "What are they talking about?"
But yeah, frying it, I have grilled it, and it grills fine. I have pan seared it, and it
No,
does
I've
fine.
pan seared it, but I've never grilled it.
I put it on the grill and grilled it, and it does fine that way too. It does fine.
It's a
baked.
white meat.
Yeah, it's a good one. So, have we missed anything on our list here? Nope.
See, like me, I kept the 25 for a reason yesterday because I didn't have any fish. I normally don't keep fish in my freezer. Like when y'all see me catch on my YouTube and I keep it, we usually eat it that night. My wife and I could eat fish 3 times a day. We both love fish that much. Mm-hmm. But we're talking about having like a little fish fry for our neighbors. And some of my neighbors, they like to boil crawfish, so maybe we'll combine that.
Oh, that would be great.
So I'll probably go one more day in hopes of getting 25 more, fillet them out, and then we'll have a neighborhood fish fry.
You know, I kept some 2 years ago, and we did a fish fry for the patrol team. Mm-hmm. But I did a fish fry for the patrol team during Christmas. Mm-hmm. I did fish, and the other guy did gumbo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We had a great Christmas dinner.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love gumbo.
But, I'm thinking these boys need to wait before they get another fish fry. So
Yeah, you don't want to spoil them.
I don't want to spoil them. So.
They'll want redfish next time.
Well, yeah, because they had redfish, trout, and I had a little flounder that I threw in there.
Nice.
So they got a little spoiled on that.
Yeah.
So you got any more about white bass fishing?
Man, I sure don't. I mean, if you don't find them at the mouth, go up the creek a little bit and look for them. Don't just stay in that one spot. I mean, this time of year, they should be somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, because it's early now, but that doesn't mean that some of them won't start up that creek.
Right.
We were talking before we turned on the recorder, is I think that these kind of things go in waves. I mean, you might have an early group, and then there's just once they start, there's just a wave of them that keeps coming until they finally all get done.
Yeah.
And what I found last year is we were catching them up in the creeks until the end of February here in the southeast Texas area.
Yeah, and like we were talking about, I thought it was kind of odd that out of the 25 that I caught or that I brought home, only like 3 of them were full of eggs. But there were some that they didn't have eggs in them, but they had egg sacs.
Yeah, they hadn't grown the eggs yet.
They hadn't grown the eggs yet, so that tells me they're going to be there a little bit longer.
Oh yeah, and usually this time of year, you usually only catch males. We caught a few females, but that's just saying.
Yeah, but some of these were females that just didn't have eggs yet. You knew that, and you could tell they were female.
So what we're telling y'all, and the whole reason we're doing this podcast and putting it out is this is the time. You go scout it now. You might catch a few, but get ready.
Don't talk about it. Go do it.
Yeah, don't talk about it. Go do it. Scout it around. Figure out where it's at. If you just can't find anything, I'm willing to help. That's what we're here for. I'm not going to lead you by the hand and take you to them, but I will point you in the right direction.
Yes, sir.
So
same here.
Yeah.
If someone wants to reach out to me, I'll help you out.
So that you can reach me at thesaltyyak@gmail.com.
Kevin's outside at yahoo.com.
So reach out to us if you need something. Or just reach out and just show us the pictures. If you're a member of the Salty Yak Pack, post it up there because we would love. Because I put a little thing on before we went yesterday. Just kind of teasing them, saying, "Hey, if y'all not thinking about white bass, now's the time to think about it."
Absolutely.
And then we went out and killed them.
Yes, we did.
I haven't posted any. You posted some pictures.
I posted some pictures,
but I hadn't posted any pictures yet of that.
Dude,
so,
my shoulders were so sore from holding up that stringer.
Well, you were literally quivering as you were holding it up. So.
And it was heavy. Yeah.
So, all right, we're going to wrap up this white bass podcast. I hope you enjoyed this one topic thing, and better yet, weekend's coming up. Get out and do some fishing.
Get outside and do something.
All right, we talk to y'all later.
Thank you.